The following podcast contains adult language and an abundance of salt. So watch your cholesterol levels. Things are about to get salty.
I feel like I'm on the Enterprise all of a sudden. Oh, wait, that's a different show, though, right?
Yeah, we're counting on. You wore a Star Trek t-shirt. Okay, so
right.
This is funny. I wore a Star Trek t-shirt to work today, and as I was at work, I was thinking about it. I'm like, I can't wear this shirt when I go to talk about Star Wars in May. It's against the nerd code. So I went and stopped at Target and bought a Star Wars shirt just so I could come here.
You want to hear something funny? I'm so uncomfortable right now because I went to my closet and got my Episode 1 Darth Maul t-shirt out that I bought in college and haven't worn since. And it's like super tight. So I'm like super uncomfortable at the moment.
Hey, at least you can get into a shirt you had in college.
Yeah, but I wanted to do a theme for it. So I have a original series t-shirt and a sequel trilogy t-shirt, and I'm going to wear them on the appropriate podcast.
Nice. Very good.
Danny's going for early 90s Seattle grunge.
Yeah.
So George Lucas then.
Yeah.
He's pulling his George Lucas in, the flannel shirt.
Flannel shirt on.
Right on.
He's going for his Tim the Toolman Taylor.
Great show.
And I just said F it, because each of them deserve better.
Yeah.
All right.
Welcome back to another episode of the Salty Nerd Podcast. I am your host, the Salty Nerd, and today's dedicated episode is all about Star Wars because it's May, and we only talk about Star Wars in May. May the 4th be with you, and I am joined by my fantastic panel of nerds, starting with, as always, Matthew Kadish, author extraordinaire. Welcome, sir. How you doing?
I'm very uncomfortable because of my tight shirt that I squeezed into for this
tight shirt
episode.
Feeling like a sausage.
It's my Episode 1 Darth Maul t-shirt that I got in college.
1999.
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable.
I'm also joined by the barbarian. Oh, I'm sorry, the Dark Lord himself, MattVader.
Ooh, you got upgraded. You got promoted, Matt.
That sounds way better.
What's up, Matt? How you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. Ready to talk about Jar Jar Binks with you. I'm super excited about that.
Don't make me salty right that fast. Come on.
Me so happy.
And speaking of Jar Jar Binks, filling in for Jude Juju because Jude hates Star Wars, we've got Danny, the artist formerly known as Fatbeard. Welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being our alternate.
Oh, no, I love
really
it.
appreciate it.
It's always a lot of fun. Love you guys.
He's also known as the Dork Knight.
The Dork Knight. Yep.
Thank you,
and
sir.
Nerds Never Say Die, which is your charity event?
Yes.
Yeah. Charity podcast.
Charity,
right?
yeah. Let's see. So by the time this comes out, a couple episodes should already be on Facebook Live. We're actually doing a May the 4th episode as well. So I have I have a therapist, Clint Banks from Headway Insight. He's going to be my featured guest for a 5-part series that deals with mental health issues that are arising because of the stay-at-home orders and the coronavirus and all the depression from loneliness, from the isolation, or whether it's anxiety and the fear you have over getting it, or things like this. So we're going to talk a lot about that.
Danny, do you think it's a coincidence that Mental Health Awareness Month is the exact same month as Star Wars Month?
Gosh, I don't know. 'Cause I tell you, Star Wars has definitely caused a lot of mental health issues.
That's not evident on social media.
Yeah.
Nope, not at all.
Not at all. But hey, listen, before we get started, I wanted to make sure that our listeners know that they can reach us on Twitter at Salty Nerd or Instagram at Salty Nerd Podcast. We have a Facebook group now. You can go to saltynerdgroup.com if Facebook is your gig. And we also have a newsletter. If you're interested in getting spammed with emails from the Salty Nerd Podcast, you can go to saltylist.com, and we'll keep you up to date on all of our exclusive episodes.
Just for the record, it's an announcement list to let people know when a new episode drops.
I'm salty about all this stuff. Sorry. Kadish is working so
Alex
hard.
is like, I just want to spam everybody.
Do it.
Yeah.
Right on. All right, guys.
Great way to convince people to sign up for the
Sign up.
newsletter, Alex.
You want to hear from us. You know you do. Come on. Anyway, we're talking about Star Wars, the prequels, 1999, way back in the day when George Lucas finally came out and said, you know what? I'm going to start this story. I'm going to show everybody what the Clone Wars were all about.
I'm going to ruin some
I'm
childhoods.
going to ruin some freaking childhoods. So let's start with 1999, episode 1. MattVader, how old were you, and did you go to the theater?
Were you even born back in 1999, Mr.
Oh,
Vader?
I was well in the middle age. No. See, in 1999, I was 29 years old,
Right on.
working at a casino in Oregon with a bunch of other nerds. So, yeah, it was.
Were you guys excited for episode 1 to come out?
Yeah, absolutely. We were super excited.
I always
Were you one of those guys who waited in line for like 3 weeks?
So, me and my two buddies, we actually had big plans. We were going to drive down to Los Angeles and take our 2 weeks vacation and get in the big long line at the Man's Chinese Theater, but it didn't work out, so we didn't go. But what we ended up doing was we went to our local theater with all the local nerds, and we did like a 2-night camp out to get our tickets. And that was fun. And then we did another 24-hour line when it released.
Day of?
Because, back then you didn't buy your seats.
Yeah.
So we had a big long line.
Had to
Our
get the
seats
line
are-
for the seats, the right seats.
Yep.
There's no
Yeah.
Fandango back in the day, huh?
But it was kind of cool because it was a small town and everybody knew each other. Everybody hung out at the same comic book shops and all that stuff. So it was fun.
That's
A lot of fun.
Did you feel like the fan experience is better back then because you guys had to be so close knit? It wasn't like a social media thing. It was all in person.
Yeah, I think so. There was a lot of more face-to-face interaction with everything, so
Yeah.
wasn't a bunch of silent people or avatars talking to each other and screaming at each other online. That's for sure.
Danny, what about you? What was your experience in 1999 with episode 1?
All right, so I would have been probably 20, and my son would have been, 1. He would have been 1.
Oh, wow, that young. Huh?
Yeah. I was still married to my first wife at the time. And, we went and we saw it at, it was in High Point, North Carolina at a Regal Theater, Regal Cinemas I think it was like on South Main. And, we, huge fans, and we were super excited. And, I had to wait in just like you were talking about, no reserved seats. So waiting in 2 different long lines, super long line just to buy the tickets, and then the super long line just to get in the seat. And then we did take it to the dismay of a bunch of people. We did take Devin because
Yeah.
I had to, but he was a little like 1. But yeah, no, I remember actually, mostly enjoying it. How memory is, and I'm the kind of guy, especially, which I'm not sure if it's healthy or not, to be honest with you, but I'm the kind of guy I tend to not store in my memory banks negative memories, because I only have so much space there.
Yeah.
So when I think back on it, I just think about the positive things and not so much like...
That's not bad. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I have some ex-girlfriends who would disagree with that. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to talking about this and the experience, especially the second and third ones.
Yeah.
Because that was more, my son was older, so it was a lot more fun where, the movie going experience for the first one was more like me and Deborah taking turns, keeping Devin quiet and attentive,
I know. I brought my son to episode 7. He was only 1, but
Yeah.
he was pretty good. Matthew Kadish, what about you? What was your experience in 1999 when you saw The Phantom Menace?
So I was 21 years old. I was going to film school at Penn State University, and it came out over the summer. So I was back home and with my parents in Massachusetts when it came out, and I can remember I woke up early the day after it premiered and caught the very first matinee so I could bypass the lines. So I saw it in Massachusetts early in the morning, and then as soon as the movie ended, I went back home and then decided to go see it again. So I went and saw it a second time that afternoon, and then I got home again, and the rest of my family was like, "Hey, we want to go see Star Wars." I was like, "Okay." So I went and saw it a third time that night.
Nice. 3 times in one day.
3 times in one day.
Nice.
I was such a huge Star Trek fan, or Star Wars fan that I'd been following the creation of Episode 1 for I think 3 years before it came out, and I'd just been like immersed in Star Wars stuff for the longest time, and Star Wars was like a big influence on me wanting to get into filmmaking. So when this new Star Wars dropped, I was all about it. And I was just so high on the fact that it was a new Star Wars. I didn't care how bad it was.
Yeah.
I just liked being able to see a Star Wars in the theater, because when the original trilogy came out, I never got to see them in the theater. They were always video experiences for me.
Oh,
Yeah.
you didn't see Return of the Jedi? Because I actually remember seeing Return of the Jedi. It was the only one I saw in the
Well,
theater.
when I was a kid, we lived in Germany, and we had a family friend send us a bootleg copy of A New Hope on VHS. And I didn't even know that there were other movies that existed in the Star Wars. I thought it was just that one movie.
Oh, wow.
And then when we moved back to the States, I found out that there were 2 other movies. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And by the time I learned about them, they were already on video and stuff.
I got you.
So,
That's pretty cool. So you were jazzed, like
Oh,
peak,
yeah.
peak level nerdom. That's
It was one of those things where I had the blinders on because I was just so happy that there was new Star Wars. And over time, as I've rewatched this movie, I'm just like, I can't believe I ever liked this.
Yeah, we'll get there in a minute. We'll get to the salt in a minute about the prequels, because I think we all, in general, maybe I don't know about you, but I think the three of us have pretty much the same opinion about them. But I was the target demographic. I was a ripe young age of 10 when this movie came out, and I was freaking jazzed because I remember my father had taken me to the special editions that came out like 97, 96.
Yeah.
So that was my first Star Wars experience, was actually in the theater. And I didn't know any better, special edition or not. I knew I watched the VHSs, but I was like, oh, there's extra footage? Friggin' lay. Yeah, let's go. I was so excited. My dad took me to all those. And those were packed theaters as well. And I have a very distinct memory of standing in the lobby of a movie theater. I think it was in New Hampshire when I was living at the time. And I remember being so little that I was looking up at everybody, and I just remember everybody had like Star Wars hats. Like the person in front of me had like a Yoda, hat on backwards that says like Return of the Jedi on it.
You saw it in New Hampshire?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Oh, we were neighbors. I was in Massachusetts at the time.
Yeah, 96 and 97, I think I was in New Hampshire.
I'm surprised you guys weren't best friends or something like that.
Who knew?
Well, I was like 11 years older than him.
Some annoying little kid. But anyway, yeah, my dad was working out of state, so my mom took me to go see episode 1. We saw it 10 times. It was about once a week for 10 weeks in a row.
Nice.
Because my mom was like, your dad was out of town. We weren't doing anything. I had a 10-year-old kid with me that I needed to keep entertained. And I was like, let's go to the movies. I was like, all right. So yeah, I saw that movie 10 times in theaters, episode 1, I remember. And I mean, like I said, I was a target demographic. So all the little gripes that like you guys probably have at the time, I was like, this is perfect. I love Jar Jar. I love little Anakin. He's just like me.
You had to get warped over time.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
I had to be.
I think I saw it
influenced.
5 times when it first came out in theaters. That was the max.
So
number.
God bless my mom for taking a freaking 10-year-old to the movies 10 times in a row to go see Star Wars, a movie she probably didn't even like.
Once for every year of your life.
Yep, exactly.
The only close experience I have to that is I took my oldest son, Devin, to the original Fantastic Four movie, the first one with Chris Evans.
Yeah.
And we saw that a whopping 13 times
Holy
in
cow.
the movie theater because he loved it so much. No, Fantastic Four was his
I was
jam.
going to say the Roger Corman one.
No. Well, I shouldn't
you
say
said the
original.
original
Yeah, I mean,
Fantastic
well, the first one before the terrible reboot they tried.
Chris Evans and Jessica Alba.
Yeah. But
Right on.
he loved that movie so much, and I'd never in my life had done anything like that, up until coming to Vegas, and I got to do movie reviews for a while. So there was a time where I was like, oh, well, I can see this movie for free. And then, well, I liked it so much, I'll go pay and see it again. Oh, man, and especially with the Marvel movies. Like, we got close. We saw, like, which one was it? I think the first Infinity War. It was Infinity War. We saw that, I think, like 9 times.
Dang.
But yeah, so Fantastic Four, believe it or not, still holds a record in my household.
You know what's funny is Fantastic Four, it came out the same year as Revenge of the Sith.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was at the Cannes Film Festival, because Revenge of the Sith was premiering there in Europe.
Was that because you used to work in Hollywood?
Yes, it is. So I was actually at the festival, and I went and saw Fantastic Four for the first time there, and it was all in French with English subtitles.
Oh.
And also they were playing the original A New Hope on TV in French, without subtitles. And so one night after the festival ended, I was just in my little rented apartment with no air conditioning. And I was looking for something to watch. And so I was watching this French version of A New Hope on TV because I was all jazzed to see the the Revenge of the Sith the next day. And the voice they got for Darth Vader was really like high pitched, like and I was like, they totally cast the wrong French guy for Darth Vader.
The Le Death Star.
Yeah, Viva la Death Star.
Oh my goodness. So let's get into our opinions about this movie, which I think this is going to be the most fun segment. This is going to be awesome to talk about. So
episode 1,
yeah,
The Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace.
I remember when they announced the title for it, I was like, that's not the real title.
That sounds menacing.
Oh, The Phantom Menace. That sounds exciting. I don't know. I don't remember what I thought about it, but I know when I was watching the movie as a kid, I freaking loved it. I loved every minute of it. I was sold from start to finish.
Well, it was such a 1950s kind of sci-fi-ish title. Like
Well, that was
yeah, I know.
always
that was-
his,
yeah, that was his bread and
I know
butter.
that was his inspiration for it. But I can remember like my roommates in college, because this came out my junior year in college, I believe. We were all like huge Star Wars fans, and when that title was announced, we were all like dumbfounded. We were like, "That's a dumb title. Why did they call it that?" And they kind of kept that going for the first 2 movies with like Attack of the Clones. Like that's another kind of very sci-fi-ish 1950s like B movie title.
I remember kind of the same thing when that title came out. I remember not believing that was the title.
Yeah.
Attack of the Clones.
Did you guys? I know there's a story that goes around a lot when the movie first came out, or when the trailer first came out. People would buy a movie ticket to go see.
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
Brad Pitt
Yeah.
movie, Meet
Joe Black.
Joe Black,
Yeah.
just to watch the trailer and then leave halfway
Yeah.
through.
Yeah, that movie did great box office because of that trailer.
Yeah.
Did you guys? Did any of you guys do that?
I didn't do it personally, but like I knew people who at college who did, and they would just go to the local movie theater, buy a ticket, go see that. But then like it would come out on the internet, like someone would leak it,
Yeah.
and then like you just download it and watch it on
Yeah,
loop,
I
which is what
watching,
I did.
I remember watching that trailer on like some message board or something.
Oh,
Like that back then.
we used to like deconstruct the lightsaber scenes between Maul and Obi-Wan, because like you only got like a couple seconds of it in there, but like up until that point, the most we had was like the final like Luke and Vader scene where they're fighting, and then there was the Obi-Wan and Vader scene in episode 4, and seeing a young Obi-Wan going toe to toe with the double lightsaber Sith guy.
I get chills just thinking about it.
Like our eyes would pop out of our head when we saw that stuff. It was
Did
crazy.
you guys see that reimagining of the New Hope
did.
Vader Obi-Wan fight? Oh my God,
the
that's so
fan
awesome.
film on YouTube.
Yeah.
I like
really
it,
good.
That's
but
good stuff.
I like if somebody were to say, "Hey, we're going to put this in the movie," I'd be like, "Don't, please don't." Like it's really cool, but I'm like,
I don't know. Out of the other stuff they've added, it would be better than anything else they've added.
Speaking of putting stuff in the movie, I don't know how you guys rewatch these movies, but I bought the Amazon Star Wars collection like years ago, and so I had the movies on my Amazon account that I can watch digitally. And when I watched episode 1, they replaced the puppet Yoda with a full CGI Yoda in there. I was like, you got rid of puppet Yoda?
yeah, oh yeah,
Just
that
to make it
puppet looked like
consistent?
garbage.
Well, it did look like garbage, but I was like, the entire time I was watching, I was like, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
And then by the time I got to the end, I was like, oh, they replaced Yoda with a CGI Yoda.
So that happened actually while they were doing episode 2. They had nailed down the CGI version of Yoda enough to feel comfortable using it. So for consistency's sake, they went back and retrofitted the CGI Yoda into the episode 1. And then from that point on, from episode 2 came out in 2003? So ever since 2003, there's only been the CGI version, unless you owned a copy of the old one.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have the DVD of episode 1,
Yeah.
and it's got puppet Yoda.
Yeah, I just took the easy route and watched it on Disney Plus.
Yeah, that's what I did. Disney Plus, I did the same
I
thing.
pay for it. I'm going to use it, man.
Oh, you
So-
know, that gives me an idea. So let's do this. We'll go around the table and compare your original thoughts when you were at the theater and you saw the movie to the most recent rewatch that you did, and see how your opinion has changed over the last 20 years,
So
or if it even has.
it hasn't a whole lot. I have this very vivid memory of that night. Super excited going in. I mean, every nerd in Southern Oregon was there, right? Super pumped, super jacked. Everybody's chanting Lucas's name in the line going in, And when we left, everybody was so quiet.
Oh no.
Just super quiet. I mean, this was the midnight crowd.
Yeah.
This was the hardcore fans, right? So when everybody left, we were all just kind of like shuffling out. Everybody was kind of quiet. Our friend Lori was crying.
Oh no.
Literal tears coming out of her eyes. She's all like, I don't know what we just saw. What was that? That wasn't a Star Wars movie. And we're all like, you're getting a little carried away there. But yeah, I mean, it was funny because everybody was just like, what the hell did we just see? It was nuts. And yeah, man, it was just like, we were watching it again this week. I mean, I've seen it plenty of times, but my impression was the same. It's held up pretty good. Technically, I think it still looks really good.
We'll talk about the technicals in a minute.
But it needed some work.
Did any of you see the? Because it was while I lived here in Vegas, I went with my friend Glenda to see it. The Phantom Menace in 3D.
Yes, I did see that.
Yeah, I went and saw that. I hate that they abandoned that. They should have. They just because you're a completionist, I'm sure you can appreciate that. It was just why not just finish it out? You know what I mean? It's like,
I don't know why. Yeah, because I remember they announced it was like a big thing. They announced 3D Star Wars, and then
I think something happened with the sale, and that's what changed it. Like I guess like they sold it to Disney, and Disney didn't want to do that or something. I think you would probably know better, Matt.
First time hearing of it.
Oh,
Actually.
okay.
yeah, they did it. They did episode 1 in 3D, and then they just abandoned it. They didn't release the other two.
Yeah. I remember actually enjoying that, which I thought was weird. Yeah.
I remember watching this movie, and as soon as the Trade Federation guys started talking, I was like,
What did you say? Down there.
I was like, what is going on? This is ridiculous, because nothing matched them. It was just like, they're going to get in trouble for being racist now, because definitely Asian stereotypes with the Trade Federation guys. And then Jar Jar showed up.
Yeah, the moment Jar Jar showed up, the whole movie got derailed. Like I remember when I first saw it in the theater, I was like super on board. I was like, oh, they said I have a bad feeling about this. There's lightsaber battles, droids.
Like 3 seconds into the movie.
And then like as soon as Jar Jar shows up and he's doing his whole like Misa Jar Jar Binks thing, I was just like, oh no, and I had to be like, I really hope that he's just in the first part of this movie, and then he just wouldn't go away.
Danger, Will Robinson, danger.
like if it wasn't for Jar Jar, because it's funny, when I was rewatching this, like there are aspects to Jar Jar where if he didn't sound like such a clown, he could have been an interesting character. But I think that my biggest problem with the first two prequels is that I feel like George Lucas specifically tailored these movies to be a vehicle to sell merchandise to kids. And so his concept, instead of telling a good story, was to like create stuff that was meant to be marketed to a certain demographic. And that big demographic that he was targeting was the same demographic that went crazy for the Ewoks when Return of the Jedi came out, which was young kids. And so like it worked on Alex, but for those of us who were a little bit older and were Star Wars fans, we were really turned off by it.
If I remember correctly, the stores were full of episode 1 merch a month before the movie even came out.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
I had a freaking Jar Jar Binks plush doll. That
Jar
was,
Jar's
4
whole
feet tall.
existence was to, be the character that kids like
attached to.
Yeah.
the Baby Yoda character, basically.
Misa gonna sell a lot of toys.
Yeah, and I can't fathom anyone like, working on this movie and seeing this performance as they're shooting it and being like, George, this is a great idea. Yeah, this character is going to be beloved by all.
We'll get into that in a minute. But I wanted to get Danny. So you had a pretty good experience because you had your son with you, right? So or that doesn't really count for episode 1.
Episode 1, not so much. We did see the midnight showing, so it was probably and he wasn't even like quite 1, so he was still like we were holding him and stuff.
So what about you? What was your experience when you saw it then? And then did you continue to like it moving forward, or did it fall apart for you?
So I saw it a few times in the theater, and just because like I didn't want to hate it, you know what I mean? So like you'll watch a movie again just to give you like I want to like this movie, and so like by the third time I was like, it felt like I was like, so the Jedi are like pawns for the government, basically, being sent to negotiate trade deals. And
they were like a weird like fifth pillar of government.
Yeah,
type
you know,
thing.
and
Like they were never. It was never really
Intergalactic.
clearly defined what their role in the Republic was.
They're the keepers of peace. in the
especially,
galaxy.
by this point, like there's none of this. We have no information basically on their government involvement. Basically, is what they're like another division of a form of government.
And that's a real problem with the prequels in general. Is like it's so badly defined what everything is and how it works together. Like nothing in these movies makes sense.
Well, I was going to ask you guys, who do you think is the main character of episode 1?
There is no main character.
That's one opinion. Is there anybody
No,
else?
it's absolutely true. Like if you analyze this episode 1 from just like a straight story perspective, it has no main protagonist.
It really doesn't, because it starts out you're following Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, and then you're introducing Anakin. It is very much like an ensemble.
So
you know.
the definition of a main character is the character whose actions and decisions drive the action forward, and who also it has the most transformative arc throughout the course of the movie. So the character who changes the most. But if you look at this movie, it's not really about Obi-Wan.
Right.
It's not really about Qui-Gon. It's not really about Anakin.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about Jar Jar. It's not about Padme. Like they're all there, but the focus is never really on any of them.
It's about Darth Sidious, man. Come on.
Really? No, because like Anakin doesn't show up until like 30 minutes into the movie.
Right.
Obi-Wan
It's about
Kenobi
45 minutes.
Is
Yeah.
it 45?
Yeah.
Wow. Obi-Wan Kenobi like just is nowhere to be seen for a good chunk of the movie.
Yeah,
while
he
they're on
just
Tatooine.
disappears.
Disappears for a
Like,
while.
you're going to stay at the ship.
I think the only one
They rose tea coder.
the only one that we're consistently with is Qui-Gon.
Is Qui-Gon.
From the beginning to the end, Qui-Gon is pretty much always in the center of attention.
And you know what's funny when I was rewatching this, and it was something I'd never picked up on before, but while I was watching this, I was like, you know what? Qui-Gon's kind of a dick.
Yeah.
like he's a real asshole.
I'm going to take her son.
What's
like he consistently uses the Jedi mind trick to just manipulate and swindle people.
he's
a
rogue, man.
Like he's like, you're going to give us a transport, and they're like, unka bunka, give you a transport, and then like he tries to like steal the light speed engine. He's like, Republic credits will do fine, and the Middle Eastern.
No, Republican credits no do good, or whatever the hell he said.
Yeah, this-
Credits are no good out here. We need something more real.
that mind trick no work on me.
I'm right there. Yeah.
the Middle Eastern fly didn't go for it.
What are you, some kind of Jedi?
But
Waving their hands
I mean,
around.
like if you just if
we
you
know all the lines.
if you just look at how Qui-Gon like interacts with people, like there's a part in there where he's like, I didn't come here to Tatooine to free slaves, and you're just like, dude. it's like first of all, these two slaves took you into their home and have been like helping you.
Yeah.
It's like the least you could do is like free them. You
I
know?
mean, why didn't he just like tell, what's his name?
Watto.
Just, they're coming with me. Stop
Yeah,
me.
what are you going to do?
What are you gonna do?
on you. All right.
Well, it's
I'll
also
chop your
funny
head off.
because like Watto isn't the only junk dealer in that place, and so he's like, we're the only,
I have the only Nubian.
yeah.
Nubian. There you go.
But it's like, oh, you're,
love Watto.
you're just going to take Watto's word for that? Like, you're not going to go shopping around checking out the other places?
It's like, there's only one auto mechanic shop in the entire Las Vegas area.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, like, why couldn't he go to the local cantina and just like charter a ship off planet,
With some Republic credits.
Yeah, exactly.
20,000 Republic credits to be exact. See, I know everything about this movie. I watched this movie so many times when I was a kid. I loved it. None of the plot stuff, none of the main character stuff, Jar Jar didn't bother me that much. It wasn't until after the prequels had all come out. It was like 2005, 2006. And then I got introduced to Red Letter Media. And I got educated.
But getting back to Qui-Gon being a complete dick, I mean, like he shows up to Shimmy Skywalker's hut, and it's like, yeah, I freed your kid. He's coming with me. And the mom's just like, oh, Annie, what do you think about this? And Annie's like, I want to get out of here. She's
be
like,
a Jedi.
she's like, okay.
No, but she was a little bit more sympathetic than that. She's like, he was meant to be with you.
But, he was,
But dude, if someone showed up at your house and be like, your kid's coming with me.
If I was a slave, I'd be like, my kid has a chance to be a Jedi and get out of this slave life. Yeah, all right. It's for better for him, I guess. I wouldn't. I mean, not necessarily.
You kind of have to figure that she knew something was up with this kid because he was immaculately conceived.
Yeah.
She's like, I got to get rid of this kid before he kills me
But just
with his mind.
I was just amazed at how big of an asshole Qui-Gon was. I'd never noticed it before my recent rewatch.
That's kind of his thing with the council too.
Yeah.
I don't think the
He's a
council
rogue.
members even like him.
No.
It's like, I'm going to do this, whether you like it or not. It's like, okay.
Yeah, he didn't follow the rules. Like Obi-Wan was always like, how come you're not following the rules, Master? He's like, screw those guys. Those guys are lame. Let's go.
And he was always lecturing Obi-Wan, even though Obi-Wan was like objectively right. That stuff.
I don't know about that. Obi-Wan was a book nerd. He kind of was just like, well, but the rule says I can't do that. Qui-Gon's like, so what? Just do what's right.
No, but if you really think about it, so everyone was telling him like, don't train this boy, and he's like, I'm going to train the boy, and then his dying wish is like, Obi-Wan, train the boy. And if he'd just been like, yeah, okay, I'm not going to train this boy, like so much bad stuff would have been avoided in the future.
It arguably could have been worse because what if Sidious found him in the beginning? Like, ooh, what if he's like, hey, there's some weird Force stuff going on Tatooine. I got to go.
Guys, what was Sidious's plan anyway? Because it's kind of implied that he was the one who impregnated Jimmy Skywalker.
Well,
It's not until
that's in the comic books.
yeah, it's way.
Well, they kind of implied it in Revenge of the Sith, but at the same time, like his plan is what exactly? Like he wants to have this blockade of Naboo so he can do a power play for the the Chancellor's position, but at the same time, it's like
he was the whole goal was to get into a higher place of power. So he was trying to make the current Chancellor look weak by starting this war. With the Trade
but none of his
Federation.
actions really make any sense. Like if you really think about it,
Of course not. This is like going deep into the weeds on that one.
It's just one of the flaws of the movie.
Yeah, it was a plot for the sake of a plot. Like
Yeah.
I need to get from point A to point B. It doesn't really matter how. Just make it happen. Like I don't think they ever really. I mean, he did this. George did this in like one or two drafts, and there wasn't Lawrence Kasdan there to kind of check him and be like, hey, this doesn't make any sense. Let's flush this out. It was all George. He was surrounded by. This is what we were going to talk about. He was completely surrounded by yes men at this point.
I think the worst thing about episode 1 is like, especially when rewatching it, it feels like a show reel for special effects.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't feel like an actual movie. It just feels like, hey, here's the new technology of 1999.
And man, did they use that technology.
You know why it feels that way? Because that's exactly what it was.
It's like, hey, look at our CGI character. Hey, look at our CGI, sound stages. Hey, look at our big computer generated action sets.
In their defense, though, they did use quite a bit of miniature technology, and the whole Tatooine pod racing thing was all miniatures. Coruscant was miniatures. Like they did a lot of work in these movies, and it looks gorgeous. It still holds up.
I don't know if it holds up as well as it should, but I think my biggest issue with these movies, when it comes down to it, is that these movies were designed around set pieces meant to showcase this new technology that Lucas was developing. And because of that, the story kind of plays like a second fiddle. It's like, let's get to the next set piece. Let's get to, the pod racing scene. Let's get to the, aerial battle and stuff like that. And the Gungan War. And so like, it just goes, and this is a problem with each one of the prequels, which is it goes from set piece to set piece to set piece, just loosely strung together by a story. And this was actually a big problem with the sequel trilogy as well, where it did the exact same thing. So at least you can say it's consistent. But like that's like a telltale sign of like a bad storyteller, is where they want to get to like the big set pieces and they're not natural outgrowth of the story. It's just something that is shoehorned in there for spectacle's sake, as opposed to a natural kind of progression. Like when we talk about Empire Strikes Back, there aren't, other than the Battle of Hoth, there aren't any huge set pieces in that movie, but it's arguably the best Star Wars movie ever because it's so emotionally poignant.
Yeah.
And none of that is present in the prequels, in my opinion.
Dan, you said you looked like you were going to say something.
Yeah, so no, I was just going to say, you reminded me, if you ever want to test out a new surround sound system, that pod racing scene is tits for that. It really is.
I there's no complaining. Or the still bubbles. I love that, man.
I mean, taken in isolation, like that scene's great.
Yeah.
But as a part of a larger story, it's just shoehorned into that movie because there's really no reason why they have to do a pod race in order to get that engine.
He had to win the bet so he could get set free.
It was a very complicated way of freeing a slave and getting enough money to get off the planet.
Yeah.
But I love it. I mean, frick, dude, that pod race was dope. I loved it. Every minute of it. I was like, yes, this is
I love that
arguably the best part of the movie.
The arcade game's great.
Yeah, or the N64 version too is pretty good. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any complaints about, like, as far as like the sound design with Skywalker sound and all the new technology that George put in place, except for maybe the Gungan battle, I don't feel like aged very well. But the rest of it, it's gorgeous, man.
I tend to make things up that weren't probably supposed to be there in my head.
What?
It's like, it really grosses me out when I see little Anakin talking to Padme, knowing they're going to hook up later.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Well,
weird.
How old was she in this movie? Or not Natalie Portman, but the actor.
I think she was
The character. She was like 15, right? So
14 or
14 or
14
15.
and 15. So
So it was like a 4.5 year difference.
yeah.
5 year
Can you
difference?
guys explain the Naboo system of government to me, where they elect a 15-year-old girl to lead them?
Well, she's just a figurehead, right?
Yeah,
She didn't
more
really.
or less.
Yeah.
But she got
But
voted into
no,
that.
she's not just a figurehead, because the whole premise of the invasion is to capture her so she can sign a treaty to make the invasion legal. So she has some type of actual like power, and plus she makes the case to the Republic Senate, and then she leads the liberation movement back on her planet.
Maybe they got this weird Logan's Run thing going on Naboo.
But they always seem to elect an underage woman to lead their planet, and so I'm wondering, like, what qualifies these, I mean
I don't know. I think as far as the story is concerned, she was basically born and bred to be in politics from like day one. She was in those classes. Like she was.
But who elects a queen?
She was groomed to do that.
I don't know, taxpayers.
Because
I don't know the Naboo. Well, I don't think George even thought about it.
But that guy with the beard, he's the Nabooian or Nubian planetary governor. The guy who's the guy was saying like the death toll is catastrophic.
Yeah.
That guy.
You must contact.
So like he basically runs the planet. So what do they need a queen for? If they have a governor.
I think you're thinking too much about it.
And why does she look like a geisha?
You got to turn your brain off, man.
Because Star Wars. That's why. Because George was like, I want this to be a spectacle.
You know what was one of my
Naboo was gorgeous though.
You know what was one of my favorite parts of this movie when I was doing the rewatch, and I'd never really picked up on it before, but it just kind of hit me this time around, was after R2-D2 saves the cruiser from being destroyed. So they bring R2-D2 in front of the queen, who's actually the decoy, and Amidala, the actual queen, is pretending to be the handmaiden, and the decoy is like, Padme, go clean this R2 unit as thanks for saving us. And I'm just like, did the decoy really just give the queen like this menial like labor task?
Clean the droid.
It's like, I wonder if the rest of the people on the ship are supposed to know who's the queen and who the decoys are.
I don't think they do because they're shocked when they reveal it.
Yeah. At the end, because they didn't know. She stepped
the
up.
worst part of this movie was that that supposed mystery of like who Padme really is. Because I remember leading up to the release of this movie, what's her name? Natalie Portman was on every magazine cover as Queen Amidala. So when you went to see the movie, you knew she was Queen Amidala.
Right.
But then in the movie, they try to fool you with people like because you see her. Okay, the first time you see her, she's Queen Amidala. Then the next time you see the queen, who's the decoy, it's obviously not her. And
I couldn't tell them apart.
Oh, I could.
I couldn't. They were completely the same person. Come on now.
So like Matt was being sarcastic. So
Was he
Totally sarcastic.
yeah. So this entire movie, they're trying to fake out the audience by making you believe that Padme isn't actually Queen Amidala, even though she obviously is on so many different levels. And it's all leading up to this big reveal at the end where she comes out and she's like, I'm actually Queen Amidala. And everyone's like, oh. But like the audience figured out like the second scene into the film.
Yeah.
And so because of that, like there's so much wasted effort in this movie trying to build up to that reveal. Whereas if they had just been honest about the decoy situation at the beginning and then had it revealed to the characters towards the end, like you probably could have done a lot more with the Padme character. But because they wanted it to have that big shocking moment, it was, I mean, and this just goes to show how bad of a director and writer that George Lucas really is that he
Shots fired. Shots fired.
he actually thought that this was like going to be a big payoff for the audience. And you're just like George, what were you thinking?
Again, it goes back to like nobody was there to check him and be like, hey man, like somebody like you.
So please point your angry tweets not to Salty
Yeah,
Nerd,
no,
but
like-
to Matt
Kadish.
Kadish. Well,
all you
another
Birds of Prey fans too.
another solution would have been a different marketing approach. Like, how much more badass would it have been had we had no spoilery visuals of Darth Maul. And the first time you see Darth Maul with that double-bladed lightsabers, when you open the door, you're like, "Doosh." Like that would have been so badass had I not already seen it in the trailer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But I mean, that moment in the trailer though is what got everyone like super, like made them jizz in their pants.
Yeah, but it also made everybody like wonder where the hell was this character at? He was in the last.
he
he's in the
shows
last
up-
5 minutes of the show.
He shows up in a hologram.
The Phantom Menace.
He's the Phantom. Or no, I think Palpatine's the Phantom.
Yeah,
That's the other
yeah.
thing too, is you never really find out who the Phantom Menace is. It's either Palpatine or Darth Maul.
It's funny. One of the showings I went to on the night that I saw it 3 times. So there were people who were cosplaying, who went to go see the movie, and a lot of them were dressed as Darth Maul. And when Darth Maul got killed at the end, all of them at the same time shouted, "No!"
I bet they were happy to find out later.
I mean, the only thing I can compare it to is the Reylo seeing Adam Driver die.
Oh my god.
in
hilarious.
The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
That's the only comparable thing I can think of.
It's so funny. I mean, there's so much to love about this movie that it's just it's like he had equal parts awesome. Everything's gorgeous and pretty, and this is so cool.
It was
and the
gorgeous
sound-
and pretty.
And
but
then there's equal parts cringe, where you're just like, why?
aren't you an angel?
I hear the deep space pilots talk about them. See, I know all the lines. How creepy
It's
is
like,
that?
you're really pretty. I'm going to marry you in 10 years.
Yeah, they didn't think about that very much. Or no, I honestly think a lot of the people that were working with George were like, hey, maybe we should make him a little older. And George is like, no, he's
You know,
gotta be
I
a
was
kid.
actually thinking about that very thing on the way over here today. It's like Luke Skywalker was 18, right?
Yeah.
You know, and in the movie, he's like, no, he's too young to train or too old to train, you know, and all this kind of stuff. And he was 10, right? 10, 11 years old. I don't know. But they could have upped his age a little bit to like 12 or something and
Just make him the same age.
At least
as
made it not
15.
quite so weird.
Yeah, 14 or 15.
Yeah.
It would have been able to sell.
Could have
I would've
gotten
been able
a
to-
better actor for the character too.
Oh, yeah. That poor kid. I kind of feel
I
bad
do
for
feel
him.
bad for Jake Lloyd. Like,
Because, man, we were ruthless to that kid
yeah.
on the old internet. the
Oh,
last
come
10
on. He
years.
still has Jingle All the
So
Way.
what you're saying is Star Wars fans have always been toxic?
Always. Always. Not,
100%.
today's stuff's a little bit next level, but yeah, it's always been there.
It's rough though. I do feel bad for that kid because he didn't deserve it. And George, I don't feel like George protected him very well.
You know what though, Alex, because you're such an outspoken critic of movies that are based around kids, I'm actually surprised that because, you know, we talked about earlier how this film felt like it was specifically manufactured to sell stuff to kids.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is to have the kid surrogate where like the 10-year-old can be like, oh, that's me up there on the big
I
screen.
can do amazing things too.
And like if you look at the first 2 movies, episodes 1 and 2, they have kids in them fairly prominently, and because of that, the movies just feel so dumbed down. By the time you get to Revenge of the Sith, like it feels like George kind of wisened up a little bit and was like, okay, we're going to make this more for the adults.
Yeah.
And it's widely agreed that Revenge of the Sith is the best of the prequel trilogies. And I think it's because like he stopped trying to be all family friendly, because the whole purpose of creating like the droid army and stuff like that was so he could kill bad guys without actually like killing people, you know, like
Right.
this was during the era where they were replacing guns with walkie-talkies and ET and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So Lucas was very like cognizant of these, you know, what he was putting out there. And he was really trying to gear these movies towards children. And that was a big mistake on his part, I thought.
Yeah, you really don't see anything get killed in these things, right? Except for droids and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, you see a lot
Gungans.
of aliens get killed.
Well,
Geonosians.
Qui-Gon, man, that was, you know,
That was a rough one.
Yeah, that was.
No blood though.
Well, his
No.
his
No, it was more like a singe mark,
okay.
yeah, like a burn. It wasn't blood.
And even when they,
no, there was red mist when he cut Darth Maul in half.
That was cool. Yeah, I remember
Little
that.
red mist
Yeah,
came up because that
Yeah.
makes sense. But
Yeah.
whatever.
you know, there people were getting hit with green balls of whatever.
No, they're blue. The blue energy
yeah,
balls.
yeah,
I don't
whatever.
understand what those things were either, but I don't know. The most redeeming thing about this movie is the last battle, because I mean, we have to agree that is a huge like plus for this movie. How
yeah.
amazing that last battle was.
You know what? Like when I first saw the final lightsaber duel, I was blown away. But upon each time I'm watching it, I'm just like, what is that room? Why are those shields on like a timer? You know,
Yeah.
like what's their purpose? Like what function do those shield things serve? Where they like, disengage and then re-engage, and like nothing in this movie actually makes any real
Why is there a
sense.
10-mile deep pit in the middle of the city?
in the middle of Naboo,
Under the palace.
There's like plasma shooting out of the ground.
These bridges that look like they belong in a video game.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful, but it makes no sense. You can't think about it.
Yeah, I mean, like if like just basic safety standards would have handrails. At the very least.
Okay,
There's no safety rails in any Star Wars movie.
Empire Strikes Back. That whole place was guarded up by
With Cloud City?
Yeah, Cloud City had guardrails in the Darth Vader fight. And
it's because Lando was in charge.
So did so did the Death Star and Return of the Jedi. They had guardrails there too. Because remember when he cut Darth Vader's hand off?
Yeah.
It was like, whoa, wow, there's the guardrail.
That's the next episode.
That is the next episode. Real quick, before we go, we are actually going to talk about episode 2. But before we do, I wanted to make sure that the listeners know that you guys can go to saltynerdclub.com. If you guys enjoy what you hear and you want to support the podcast, you can go to saltynerdclub.com. You can sign up for our Patreon, $1, $5, whatever you feel like our content is worth. We are more than appreciative of it. You guys get access to some cool new content, some behind the scenes stuff, some bloopers. You get stickers and t-shirts. There's all kinds of different tiers and rewards. So go to saltynerdclub.com and you can help support this podcast, and we can make it even better than it is already. Next up, we're talking about episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Better or worse than episode 1? You go.
Oh boy, I'm gonna go worse.
Worse?
Yeah.
Wow.
Danny, better or worse?
Better.
Better. Okay. Kadish?
I actually think Attack of the Clones gets kind of a bad rap, but I think that episode 1 and episode 2 are equally bad.
Yeah, equally bad's fair. Yeah, equally bad.
Equally bad. Okay. I think Attack of the Clones is better, but not by much. It's,
Every time I see online, it's like rank your Star Wars movies the way you like them.
yeah.
Those 2 movies always flip flop for me.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah. Episode. I was just like, as much action was in that movie, I was just bored. Oh,
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe it's because that was like when you ask my oldest son, that's his Star Wars movie. That's the first one he remembers seeing in the theater. It's his favorite one, which I always thought episode 3 was his favorite. We actually had this conversation recently where he told me, no, it's actually Attack of the Clones. I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, I named my cat Django.
Nice.
I was like, and I was like, well, sorry, that dude's head got cut off. But so I mean, like, so my memories of watching it are always, kind of watching it through his eyes, and he loved it, and like, I mean, come on, we get to see Yoda kicking ass.
oh, that was cringy.
Oh, come on.
No, it was terrible.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like anytime, like you probably, for example, I will defend the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles live action reboot because my 2 youngest children loved it, and most of my friends hated it. And I'm like, you know what? If I'm watching a movie with my kids, I'm sure they do. But when I'm watching this movie with the kids and they can enjoy it, then like I'm enjoying that they're enjoying it. Maybe not so. Like maybe if I'd seen that movie without them, I would not have liked it. But I kind of liken the Attack of the Clones to my experience with my younger kids with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because Devin just loved that movie. We saw that movie several times. He had the toys, like you remember when they're Padme and Anakin are tied up in that arena.
Oh yeah.
And that little that monster.
The crab one or the rhino one?
The rhino looking one.
The rhino one.
He had that toy set up. When he was a kid, he would play with them all the time.
Dude,
I mean,
George knows what he's doing. He was making toys for kids at work, because there's a lot of really cool stuff in these movies.
Yeah.
It's just sad that the story doesn't hold up.
But I don't know. Like I wish there would have been more of the actual Clone War. You know what I mean? Because like I love the.
There's a whole TV series.
Well, who did the? See, I haven't watched any of those, but the original Clone Wars cartoon from Cartoon Network. I forget who did.
Those were really
famous.
good.
Super good.
The Samurai Jack guy. Right?
Yeah, and it ends right at the beginning of episode 3. It shows you like how they get to, the Count Dooku fight.
Yeah.
Which I love that, by the way, when we talk about that. But that was like my biggest disappointment. Was I was really hoping to see more of the Clone Wars that they talked about in A New Hope, and like I was excited for like the 2 biggest things I was excited about when I heard about the prequels back in like '99 was that I was going to get to see the Clone Wars, and I was going to get to see the duel between Obi-Wan and Anakin.
Yeah.
Right? Those were the 2 things I was looking the most forward to, and the latter we'll talk about later, but the former I just was really bummed about because it just wasn't enough.
They named the movie after like the last 8-10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and
That's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
But I think the when I saw this in the movies, I was still like young enough to be excited for it. And I was ready, but I had lost some of that fever pitch of like nerdom. I just kind of was like along for the ride. And I remember recently when I rewatched this, I just realized like how freaking over the top everything was, to the point where it was almost boring. Like it's supposed to be like this big chase in the beginning through Coruscant. Never seen Coruscant before. Gorgeous chase. I'm like, this chase is like 10 minutes too long. Like you need to cut a good chunk of this chase out in order to keep the pace of the movie, because it gets bogged down and how tedious this chase gets through the whole city. And I just
it was more playing with their CGI effects.
exactly, yeah. And I'm like, man, come on.
And the love story felt rushed to me too. That was like the biggest
This is
problem.
the thing I want to talk about, which is that the reason this movie gets so much flack is because the crux of it, which is supposed to be the love story between Anakin and Padme, is one of the worst love stories ever put on film. Like it completely derails the movie every time it's on there, because nobody in their right mind would fall in love with either of these two people, especially Anakin.
I really hate sand.
Yeah,
It gets everywhere.
It gets everywhere.
The thing that always comes to my mind when I watch this movie and I see how terrible the dialogue is for this love scene and how these characters are so mismatched.
It's not just that love scene. I mean, it starts. That wasn't the first thing I noticed.
Oh, he was super creepy
from the very beginning of the movie, from when they're going up the elevator to Padme's apartment.
Yeah.
And he's being
even more beautiful.
I mean, Anakin's just a smarmy little smartass to Obi-Wan the whole time, and it's just the dialogue didn't work.
Yeah, one of the worst parts about this, and this goes back to there not being a main character, is that when we see Anakin for the first time in this movie, he's already turned to the dark side. He's already like an evil little prick.
Yeah.
And as we go along and we see his interactions with Padme, he just gets more and more unlikable. And some of the dialogue in their scenes, like you really have to wonder, what were the people who wrote this thinking?
When Harrison Ford told George Lucas, "You can write this stuff, George, but you can't say it," like that applies 120% to all these movies, because he didn't have anybody like Harrison Ford or Lawrence Kasdan to check him on this dialogue and be like, "Hey, bro, this is weird and creepy. We need to rework this conversation."
Yeah, there's that line where he's like, "I'm haunted by the kiss you should have never given me." There's stuff that sounds good, like if you were reading it in like high literature or something like that, like if it was like someone's internal monologue. But when you actually hear, especially because I think Hayden Christensen's performance, like he was just miscast as Anakin Skywalker. I don't think he was a good choice for the role. Like his delivery on this was just like so.
This Salty Nerd podcast.
His delivery was so whiny and immature, and nothing about his performance made you like him, or like, I don't know any girl who's just like, oh yeah, Hayden Christensen, I can't wait to.
Well, like that's the thing though, is in some of the other movies that he's in, he's not terrible. I think it was just bad direction.
I didn't think he was bad in episode 3.
I liked him a lot in episode 3.
The thing with these movies is that at the time that they were making them, the whole digital sound stage where it's all blue screen or green screen or whatever, was so new that a lot of these actors who are arguably great actors, like Ewan McGregor, Samuel L. Jackson, Natalie Portman, like they weren't used to basically having nothing to play off of, like just having to imagine like their surroundings, because they're just surrounded by blue screen,
green and blue,
like that was something that was kind of new when it came to Hollywood, and it really affected their performances because like they had nothing that they could like actually like ground themselves into when it came to doing this stuff, and it really shows. Like
other forms of CGI, the actors usually have like a tennis ball, or somebody's holding a big stick with like a T-Rex head on it. That like, hey, this is where your visual is. If you look at back some of the behind the scenes stuff, you don't see that anywhere. George is like, here, sit on this block of blue and imagine it's a spaceship,
right?
And then just act like you're going really fast. The actors were at a disadvantage to begin with because they're working with all this new technology that George wanted to use, which is fine. I mean, pushing forward technology is arguably what Star Wars is all about.
I really think Anakin should have been more of like a Han Solo-ish type character as opposed to like a whiny kind of Luke Skywalker.
Well, anything that would have been more identifiable with it, like
you just picture Darth Vader as this big imposing kind of like manly figure. And the guy they got to play Anakin, it was just like he was very slight. He was kind of effeminate. He was like whiny. It was nothing that really kind of, made him ingratiate himself into the audience.
Well, kind of to that point, I'm going to cross fandoms here, but this is one of the reasons I loved Michael Keaton as Batman, because he looked like the kind of guy that needed to be in a suit, because out of the suit, he's just so unimposing. So I kind of feel like maybe that's where George was thinking, I'm going to cast this frail kind of lanky kid.
No, George is just a really bad casting.
And then it could be. But
he does not have good instincts. When
you look at Hayden Christensen, and you're going to think the only way that dude could be scary is if he put on like a scary suit. Okay. You know what I mean?
You could say that about anyone, though. Oh, he would be scary if he had a scary suit on.
Well, that's true. That's true. That's true. But if you're already yoked, you're going to be even scarier. When you put on a scary suit. But
once Hayden flipped and got turned into Darth Vader with the black robes and the hood and everything, he was pretty imposing.
I don't.
I had no problem believing that he could turn into.
Well, that's
Darth
episode
Vader
3. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute.
But this is this
pertinent to the conversation.
Before Clone Wars start, Anakin, and he's just supposed to be
he's still like
he's supposed to be a rebellious teenager, and that's how he plays off. But it just needed more work. Yeah. The interactions he had with Obi-Wan didn't work for me, and
they were very cringy.
Yeah.
Well, that all comes down to direction and writing, right? I mean, if they were given a better dialogue script,
you can say that about any bad movie. If only this movie had a good script and good actors and good direction, it would have been good.
Actors were fine. You got some of the greatest actors that are working, but I mean, it's just
this is why people always give me a hard time, because I always say George Lucas should have hired some people to help with the script and with the acting in this movie, because it's not good. It could have been good, but the performances weren't there. But like we've said, it was more about making toys and playing with the computer effects.
I also think Lucas's direction, like he specifically directed these actors to not put emotion into their performances and stuff like that, just because. If you did any research into A New Hope and how Lucas directed that movie and his kind of track record, kind of a track record as a director, he's a very good technical director. Like, he understands the technology and he understands, how to do like some really amazing technophile stuff. But when it comes to directing actors and getting performances out of actors and crafting a story and stuff like that, he's not good. And when he basically removed anyone in his orbit that could actually tell him that his ideas were bad and trying to rein him in. So he lost some of that check and balance system that you need as a director in order to kind of like rein you in from like your worst impulses. And everyone around Lucas, at least for the first 2 films before like the fan base really let him have it, basically was afraid to tell him his ideas were bad.
Well, you can even see it in some of the behind the scenes footage.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it in their faces.
Yes.
Which I think it doesn't even talk about that in the red letter media thing. I think he talks about that.
Yeah, you can see. Yeah, you can see George sitting there with markers, like coloring. Okay, I want this CGI. I want this real.
During one of the test screenings, there was an editor who tried to basically voice his concern, and Lucas just obviously wasn't listening, and so he was just like, "Oh, screw it! I'm not going to waste my breath."
Yeah, I mean, I
want to stay employed
for the test screening for episode 1. I mean, George straight up admits it. Was it Brad Bird? Not Brad Bird. It was one of the other technical guys that was working with George. He was like, in the span of like a minute and a half, you go from an intense battle.
That was the editor.
That was the editor. Yeah. Okay, you're going from an intense battle with Qui-Gon to mourning Qui-Gon's death to celebrating the destruction of the pseudo Death Star to now you're celebrating on Naboo with all the junk. Like, there's so much going on in this short. And then George is like, I may have gone too far in a few places. Like, he knew, but then he continued that same type of activity in episode 2.
A lot of the problems that episode 1 had were like doubled down on in episode 2, where basically it's the same thing where you didn't have a main character. You had all these set pieces, which taken in isolation are pretty cool things, but don't work as part of a larger story. And it just feels like he was trying to do too much with not enough time to do it.
I think episode 2 had a main character. I think it very definitely was Anakin. You followed Anakin for the entire movie, and he didn't really have an arc to speak. He kind of was the same person at the end.
Anakin was not the one driving the action.
Who was it then?
He also didn't have any character development.
No,
he stayed
no
the same
development,
character,
except for he got
from the
really
beginning to
pissed
the
and
end.
killed a bunch of people.
There was no real main character in Attack of the Clones. And the most interesting storyline I thought was the whole kind of detective storyline that Obi-Wan goes down.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like you have all these disparate storylines where you have Obi-Wan, then you have Padme and Anakin, and to a certain extent you have like the Yoda, Mace Windu kind of thing going on back home. But one of the biggest problems with these first two movies, and I guess you could lump Revenge of the Sith into this, is that one of the great things about the original trilogy was there was a consistent antagonist throughout all of it. So like you have this direct antagonist in Darth Vader, who's a constant menacing presence throughout all three movies. And so you're kind of building up to the big confrontation with him. A big problem with the prequel trilogy is that there is no direct antagonist throughout the movie or throughout the trilogy, and there is no clear-cut main character throughout the trilogy.
What about Sidious? I mean, like,
He's
because
the-
he culminates at the
So
end.
I'm talking about direct antagonists. So someone who's actively working against the main characters.
They switched it up. Yeah.
So in the first movie, the direct antagonist was Darth Maul, but then they killed him off, and so then they bring in Count Dooku and Jango Fett, but then they kill off Jango Fett, and Count Dooku
Doesn't really do anything.
well, he dies at the beginning of the third movie, and so there is no real carryover in terms of like the main bad guy. Like you do have Darth Sidious as like the overarching villain, but you could say he's the villain for all 9 movies.
Right.
So he's kind of like the big bad, but the direct antagonist was never fully developed in this. I think that the prequel trilogy loses something because you don't have this identifiable bad guy to fight against, and you don't have a strong main character to root for. So it was a very messy kind of story structure.
Can you guys imagine if Darth Maul didn't get cut in half? He maybe is a stalemate. Qui-Gon dies, Darth Maul books it out of there because he gets maybe Padme and her crew come and save.
Or maybe another one of those useless shields for
Closes.
no meaning
Yeah,
closes.
it separates them, so he just leaves. Imagine if Darth Maul had carried over through all 3 episodes, similar to how Darth Vader had, where he was the right-hand man to Sidious, and you had a battle between him and Obi-Wan consistently throughout the 3 movies, where you finally
gets revenge for killing his master. I think that would have been...
It would have been amazing.
You should have...
Way better.
Kadish's point is 100% true. Like instead of that, you get a half movie with Maul, a half movie with Dooku, and a half movie with this guy named Grievous that nobody freaking knows about.
Yeah.
There's this running subplot of the mystery of the Sith where the Jedi Council finds out that the Sith, who were thought to go extinct like 1,000 years ago, are actually still active. And in the first film, in episode 1, when Qui-Gon comes back to the Jedi Council and reports on
I fought
it,
a Sith.
yeah, they're all just like, really? I thought they were all dead. And so they're like, hey, why don't you take your teenage apprentice and go investigate this a bit further, and instead of getting like the whole council and being like, we gotta
figure this out.
Like this is number 1 priority right here.
Like, wait, a red lightsaber? You said? Oh boy. Okay, we got to do something.
A
about
guy
this.
in black robes, huh?
Red tattoos,
Red
horns.
tattoos,
like
horns. He looked like the devil.
like you think that they would assemble a special task force just for this, because that's a big deal. But they're just like, no, Qui-Gon, you and your teenage psychic go handle it.
Yeah. So you've been pretty quiet. What did you think about episode 2? Is there anything redeeming about it, or were you just so focused on Anakin's?
on my rewatch just yesterday, it didn't change my mind at all.
No.
It was just not a good movie. It was, I didn't even like the lightsaber fights at the end between Yoda and Dooku because
Really?
it just, no.
See, I still find like there's peaks of enjoyment for me. Like I really like Obi-Wan's little mystery thing and fight with Jango. I always wanted to fast forward to like the cool parts.
Yeah.
Because that's the only parts that are really interesting.
I like some of the stuff on the clone planet, with the soldiers being made and everything. But I only really appreciated that more after I watched Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Here's the thing though. Like, so they really set up this rivalry between Jango and Obi-Wan, because like he's kind of like Obi-Wan's antagonist in his storyline.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the climax of the movie,
somebody else.
Mace Windu is the one who has to face off with Jango Fett,
and they're in the same arena too. It's not like you couldn't have done it.
Yeah, and you're like, why wasn't that Obi-Wan's
Exactly.
moment?
Well, it's because they wanted Samuel Jackson to do something cool with his purple lightsaber.
Yeah.
So,
This party's over.
Yeah. This part is over.
Sam Jackson is just Sam Jackson no matter what he plays.
So like there's so many questionable decisions like that in these movies where like just realistically from a structural storytelling standpoint, you should have certain things in these and they don't do them.
There's too much going on, and they have the advantage of the crawl at the beginning of all three movies. So I wanted to pose this to you guys. Do you think it would have been better had they not even addressed the love story at all and just made it a part of the fucking crawl, in like episode 3? Like so many years have passed.
The
and
dead
like
speak.
I think
the love has blossomed
the
between
love story
the two.
needed to be there.
Oh God, it's just so terrible.
It was terrible, but it needed
the secret forbidden love affair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think you just needed a realistic romance there.
Yeah.
Like the romance between Han and Leia in Empire, like they barely had 2 words to say to one another in A New Hope, but by Empire, like you got to see them fall in love with each other, and you fell in love with them as a couple as it happened. And for whatever reason, in Attack of the Clones, George Lucas has this weird twisted idea of what romance is, and it's like frolicking and like the grass.
The first scene we have with Anakin is him straightening his robes in the elevator. He's like, "Oh man, I hope she remembers me because I've done nothing but think about this chick I haven't seen for 10 years."
Yeah, and his behavior would make any other normal girl like call the police.
Creeper.
Yeah, right.
She said it outright. She's like, "Would you stop looking at me like that? You're making me uncomfortable." And he's like, "Oh yeah, am I now?"
He's like touching her bare back with his finger.
Oh my God, it's so cringy stuff. Okay,
I've done nothing but think about you for 10 years.
so
Like, oh, well, you're a weird little boy.
And her whole thing for why they can't be together, she's like, I'm a senator.
you're super weird.
We can't be together because I'm a senator.
Anyway,
Well, he's a Jedi.
He's a
Jedi aren't, they're supposed to be like monks or priests. They can't have.
Shaolin monks. Or
Yeah.
something. But anyway, you guys reminded me when you're talking about the battle in Geonosis. I think the worst thing in the world was freaking C-3PO's little traunt through the droid factory.
Oh, I hadn't even got there yet.
Oh God,
Brutal.
That is the worst. Anything. It tops
That's
everything else.
That's yet another set piece that was just shoehorned into the movie because they wanted to show off.
I'm sorry, but even the cartoon Clone Wars, which everybody loves, they make R2-D2 into a freaking superhero. The dude can do anything.
Oh, you know what's funny is I noticed this when I was watching the movie yesterday. Is there's a scene where they're back on Naboo where R2 is struggling to go up steps, right? Struggling to go up steps.
Yeah.
And they go back to the factory, the next day.
And he's like flying.
And he's flying around with his jetpack and stuff. It was funny, yeah.
I don't get it, man. I don't like that stuff. Like this is the type of thing that makes me a purist for like the original trilogy because I'm like, none of this stuff exists.
Kenny Baker would not be flying around with his
this is nonsense.
jetpack.
Kenny Baker, rest in peace, buddy. Any other thoughts about episode 2, or are we done bashing on it? Because I feel like that's all we've done so far. Is there anything anybody liked about this movie besides like lightsaber fights or anything like that?
I liked all the
McGregor.
I liked all
the
I liked all of the Obi-Wan's plot. I mean, we already pointed out it's we didn't get the payoff with him in Jango Fett, but
everything's just so contrived in this movie.
But I mean, I liked. I still was like, oh damn, when Anakin gets his arm cut off. You know what I mean? So it's just.
I like the little subsonic explosion things in the asteroid field.
I was just going to say that,
dude.
It's like, what was
ahead.
that sound effect supposed to be?
I don't know, but it was
like
amazing.
It's like a giant spring going off.
It's the same sound effect they used for the Dark Knight soundtrack. That boom.
Yeah, it was weird.
It was there's really cool elements to all these movies, and they're
again, technically it's awesome.
Yeah.
Script and acting.
I do have to say my favorite part of this movie, which is I can remember when I was in the theater, the moment where Yoda whips out his lightsaber, everyone lost their shit.
They did.
Like they and I still to this day I love the moment where I finally get to see Yoda fight with a lightsaber. Now I know it's not in keeping with his character, but at the same time I was like, you know what, it was cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm like, what? Like, who did that?
That was Jude.
Wow,
That's a little soundboard.
The thing about that is, like, I don't want to poo-poo on what you like, but like when Dooku's like, obviously our battle cannot be decided by who's stronger in the Force. Like, yes, it freaking can. Yoda can whoop your ass.
Yoda would whoop his ass.
So he's all like, I just didn't understand why Yoda just didn't take it to him.
The greatest part was like after he has that big crazy fight and he's jumping around doing all those acrobatics.
He picks up his cane.
He just picks up his cane and he like hunches back over and he's like, he just goes back to being old Yoda.
Hobbles over.
And
the Force is a powerful
while I was rewatching it, every time Yoda showed up on screen, Jude was like, "Oh, look, it's old baby Yoda."
It's old baby Yoda. He had a floating.
And I kept being like, "No, it's just Yoda."
He had a floating little bassinet in that movie too. He would sit in
A little floating chair.
Before we get to episode 3, real quick, I just wanted to let our listeners know that there's another way that you guys can support the podcast. If you're if you're looking for some cool merchandise with our logo on it or a funny saying from the show that you like, you guys can go over to saltynerdstore.com. It takes you directly to our Teespring account. And there's a whole bunch of different stuff there. There's mugs, stickers. We're going to work on getting some hats for you. Shirts, of course. You can get the Salty Nerd Warrior shirt, which is one of our favorites.
Salty Justice Warrior.
Salty Justice Warrior. What did I say?
Salty Nerd Warrior.
Salty Justice
you
Warrior.
did it wrong.
I did it completely wrong. That's all right. We'll leave it in here. So again, that's saltynerdstore.com. You guys can head over there to check out some of our merchandise. And of course, you can also head over to saltynerd.com and check out all of our awesome content and videos and YouTube and podcasting stuff that we do. So
yeah,
go over there
we put all of our content up on that site.
Tons of fun. So if you're curious about why one of our shirts says something goofy like "Don't poo poo pants what I like" or something, just you can head down to some of our older episodes and you can find out what the inside joke's all about.
I don't read movies.
I don't read movies. Yeah,
Is that one up there yet?
I'm not a freaking blokey sidekick.
Each have deserved better.
Each have deserved better. There's all kinds of cool stuff in there. You guys can go check it out. That's saltynerdstore.com. All right, episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Almost universally seen as the best of the prequels.
But that's like kind of saying the flu's better than coronavirus. It's just,
Guys, no. I was so excited about this movie. So when I lived in Texas when episode 3 came out, and Star Wars Celebration 3 took place a little bit before it. And I borrowed my Aunt Linda's RV, and I took my wife at the time and Devin, my oldest son, and we went to Indianapolis, Indiana, and enjoyed Celebration 3. Had a blast, and I got a bunch of I still have a lot of the stuff. I got the exclusive Darth Vader Celebration 3 action figure that I had to wait in line and overnight for. But it was a lot of fun because all the other dudes in line, we had lightsaber duels and we just talked and about all kinds of shit. It was, we were, and mostly we were doing the duels just so we could be active to keep warm because it was snowing and bitterly cold and there was ice everywhere. And they showed one of the things they showed the trailer and they had all the panels and stuff. So we were primed and excited for it. I bought the what were those called? Those really expensive lightsabers, back then. Who put those out? The
Force FX or something?
Something prop replica or something like that. Mm-hmm. Force FX. So we got a couple of those, and then it even says on it that you're not supposed to play with them. But we
of course you do.
But we totally did. And so when we went and saw the midnight showing in Texas, I think we went in it was Kingwood, Texas at the time. I actually got pulled over on the way to the theater.
Oh no.
Which, it was all good, whatever, I got out of that. And then we made it to the theater, and everybody's cosplaying. We have our lightsabers and stuff. And Devin is looks like Anakin. He's got the Anakin haircut, from Phantom Menace. And I'll never forget it, man. It was so dope. When we get into the theater, it was one of these theaters where it had almost like a stage area in front of the screen. And there were dudes down there from just local Star Wars clubs having lightsaber duels. And when they saw Devin come in, they go, "Look, it's the chosen one." And they just grab my kid and involve him. And I'll never, this dude was jumping around and rolling around and making my son look dope. I mean, my son didn't know what the hell he was doing, but he looked so cool. That's and awesome. So I just have this really happy, fun, other than getting pulled over on the way, but this really happy, fond memory of the whole, from Celebration 3 to the experience at the theater before it came out and to watching the movie. And I was just on such a high of the whole dad family thing that I fucking love that movie. And I rewatched it and I still I have no shame in saying it. I fucking love that movie.
A lot of people feel that way.
It's a good movie.
I'll tell you my experience with seeing this for the first time. So I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I was in the south of France. I was at the Cannes Film Festival, and this was like the premiere of Revenge of the Sith. Like, I can remember George Lucas was there. He had rented out the Queen Mary, this huge luxury liner that, you know, he had members of the cast staying there, and like it was like a big deal at the Cannes Film Festival. There were like signs everywhere with Darth Vader on it saying Revenge of the Sith. And the day that it was set to premiere at the main theater at the film festival, they had kind of like a pre Star Wars festival that they took all like the fan made short films and showed them in the big theater. And so I went and saw that. And then that evening I got to dress up in my tuxedo and walk down the red carpet and, you know, go to see the premiere of this movie. And, you know, I was up in the nosebleed seats in the balcony. And I was just like super excited to see this thing, because even though I didn't like the previous two movies, I was like, you know, this is going to be an experience. And, you know, how often do you get to see a Star Wars movie with George Lucas in the audience and stuff like that? And I can just remember like just praying and hoping, like, I really hope that this is going to be a good movie, good Star Wars movie. And, you know, I watched it and I was just like, nope. And I can remember when I was walking out of the theater, you know, I'm surrounded by, you know, industry people and people who, you know, are genuine Star Wars fans, and we're all dressed up in our tuxes and we're walking out, and everyone's just like, they just look so different. They're like, we were really hoping it would end on a high note. And it was just, you know, I mean, it is the best of the prequels, but in my opinion, it's still just not a very good movie.
I wish I could tell you my experience for this movie, but I don't remember it.
Were you like,
I know I saw it in a theater, but I think I was so like drained from the previous two movies that I was just like, all right, let's go watch this thing and be done with it. But yeah, it's by far the best of the first three movies of the prequels. But
it's got the absolute best lightsaber duel
for 100%.
out of all 9 films.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say, when I watch this movie now, I just kind of fast forward until the throne room scene when he goes, "Now rise, Lord Vader."
Yeah.
Then I start watching the movie because that's when it gets good. You know, so.
He starts killing kids.
Yeah, when the younglings die is when the movie starts.
So,
dude, to me, that's like, oh, that's so brutal.
that was rough, man. Master Skywalker, there's too many of them. What are we going to do?
I will say this movie has the best opening shot of any Star Wars movie ever.
I'll
okay,
agree.
this is gonna kind of harken back to the other one where it was the chase scene in Coruscant. It was just so freaking long. I was like, all right, can we just?
No, I'm talking about the opening shot.
Like the first 10 seconds when they're flying.
Oh, when
through
they're
the
flying
ships.
in between the ships. Yeah, but like after that,
Like it's kind of you know, it's kind of low key, and you see these two starships, and then they go past like the big capital ship, and everything is just like
expands,
exploding right in orbit. And you know, I can remember when this movie came out on video, I got like the Blu-ray and I watched it on my high def TV for the first time, and it almost looked like 3D to me. Like the graphics were just so incredible.
Gorgeous.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Like that opening shot, it blows anything else away out there.
Yep.
Yeah, I still feel like you could probably cut a good.
I think
3-4
my
minutes
favorite is still the first one from the first movie. It's always going to be, but
episode 4.
Yeah.
Freaking totally.
But this one's good. It's up there.
It was up there.
Right.
This movie, at this point in time, I was old enough to kind of know that these weren't great movies.
Right.
So I had already been like turned to the dark side by like Red Letter Media and other things like that. I was like, okay, so these movies aren't great. Let me try and at least get some enjoyment out of it. And I remember watching this one, and as soon as they had R2 doing some weird freaking slapstick comedy stuff with the droids, and he was like squirting oil on them and lighting them up, I was like, really? Are we doing this again?
Well, didn't he do that? He did that kind of stuff in Return of the Jedi.
He wasn't flying around like.
Well, no, it would have made more sense if he was at Jabba's floating thingy, but like he did some.
What did
like,
he do?
He zap some people.
Salacious Crumb with a taser. That's not anything compared to that.
I know, but I'm just saying the seeds were already planted.
I guess. I mean, this this is definitely like everything George did in the originals. He just amped it everything, like went up to 11 in these prequels. But I was like, all right, man, can we? And then I really, really like. I think you said you mentioned it too. I really like the fight between Anakin and Dooku. I thought that was dope.
Oh God, yeah, at the beginning.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes.
I actually, it got taken down. I put it on YouTube, so this would have been like 2000. I don't know.
It came out in 05.
Yeah. So this would have been probably 06 because I waited for to rip it off of the DVD.
Yeah.
But I set the whole that opening scene to a Deftones song called Rapture, and it was like every time they were like, because that it's just so rapid, and when the two of them are fighting. And that song's got a lot of like boom boom ba da da boom boom ba da, and it just seemed to like link up.
That.
Oh my God! But YouTube took it down because that was before they did the thing where like if you used music that they would put ads on it. Like it was back when they would just take the shit down. You know what I mean? It's gone.
I always kind of feel like Obi-Wan should have taken Anakin aside and said, hey, we need to have a talk about beheading people.
Yeah,
about
you're
your
right.
aggression.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't know that he killed him though, or he knew he killed him, but he didn't know how.
Speaking of Obi-Wan, the worst part of that fight is when Obi-Wan gets knocked out and then that thing falls on top of him.
Oh, he gets crushed.
It should have crushed his leg, but he's like, nah, he's fine.
He should have broke him in half.
Yeah.
Man.
Leave him. Or we'll never make it. His fate will be the same as ours. Hayden Christensen.
Yeah, you're a better actor than Hayden Christensen, Alex.
Thank you. There's like, again, it's the same story over and over again. I feel like I'm repeating myself too many times, but it's always like there's this level of awesomeness, but then it's subverted by this level of cringe, like right next to it. It's just like, oh my God.
It's like we have this really cool, badass lightsaber fight and beheading. And then we got the giant capital ship landing on the airstrip or whatever on the planet.
we're already, or what do you say? We're still flying half a ship.
Yeah. That thing would have dropped like a
Oh my God, like
rock.
a rock, just straight down. There's no flying. He was the best star pilot in the galaxy.
And so what about? So what are you guys' thoughts on Dooku? He was fleshed out more in that Clone Wars 2-part cartoon movie that I like, but. Like, what did you think about his inclusion in the actual movie itself?
In the prequels, it feels kind of inconsequential and kind of out of nowhere because I mean you
he's
kind of
barely in these movies.
You kind of get the idea that he was Qui-Gon's old master, but there's no real context for that. You don't even really know Qui-Gon that well.
You don't know why he left the Jedi Order. Or
there's
anything.
no information about him. He's very mysterious.
Like how he became an apprentice of Sidious. Like there really is so little.
There's no emotional attachment to the character,
except for the fact that it's Christopher Lee and he's a badass.
And he really didn't do anything until Anakin and Obi-Wan kind of faced off with him. Before that, he was just kind of like this leader of a rival political faction.
But the way Obi-Wan kills him is so brutal. It makes me think why Anakin, Dooku, or no, he doesn't kill him. Like he does the thing where he crushes his heart. Like when they're fighting on that cliff thing, and he's just like, because doesn't he shoot him
in the movie?
Yeah, in the movie.
You're talking about Grievous.
Yeah, I am talking about Grievous. Who are you guys talking about?
We're talking. You said Dooku.
Dooku.
Dooku. Oh,
Christopher Lee. Dooku.
Okay. It's the booze getting hold.
Darth.
I meant Grievous.
General Grievous.
Yeah, General Grievous. Yeah.
Okay, see, that's another thing. Like, in concept, General Grievous is really cool, and it's kind of like a little bit of a hint to like where Anakin's
he was much better in the cartoon.
Oh my God. Everybody's much better in the cartoon.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a hint of where Anakin's going to ultimately end up. He's going to be more machine rather than man. That goes like a hint as to what's going to happen.
But my thing is like, didn't he do something because I didn't get to finish 3 before this, so it's actually been a little bit since I finished. Doing another watch through of that, but I remember, doesn't he do something where he crushes his chest or something with the Force?
So he opens up his breastplate to see that he actually has a organic beating heart there. Obi-Wan does.
Yeah, and
so that gives him a target for when he uses the blaster.
The blaster.
Right.
Okay, all right.
So uncivilized.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, Grievous is cool in concept, but again, it was one of those villains that just kind of came out of nowhere. We had no context.
And unless you watch the Cartoon Network shorts for the Clone Wars, you had no context as to who Grievous was.
Yeah.
It was very.
But man, they're so good though. God.
Grievous and Dooku were both fleshed out a lot in the Clone Wars animated series, and that's another show. But
It's actually next, I think. Yeah, next week.
Yeah, cool.
But anyway,
So-
so the plot of this movie, it's way simpler than the other two.
It's just the fall of Anakin.
Yeah, and I think
it's a much more cohesive story than the other two movies.
yeah, very
Yeah.
much so. And I did enjoy this. The movie itself, I don't feel like fails quite as much as the other two. And it's actually, I enjoyed it. I watched it again recently. I haven't watched it in a long time. I watched it again recently, and I was like, besides some of the more cringier parts, again, love story, George Lucas cannot write for dialogue for love stories, because that moment when they're together in their little apartment and they're like, no, I'm so in love with you. Oh, it's because I've blinded you? It's like, oh my God, dude.
No, all of that's terrible.
You know what gets me about that, though? So the Padme love story. So in Attack of the Clones, there's that scene right after he, wipes out the sand people who killed his mother. And he's going off, he's like, but it wasn't just them. I killed the women. I killed the children. He's like doing his like exposition whiny dump. And, Padme, she's like, oh, I've never been more turned on in my life. But then like in Revenge of the Sith, Obi-Wan comes to her and he's like, Anakin killed the younglings. And she's like, that's not Anakin. He would never do that. It's like he literally confessed to you that he killed women and children, in the last movie.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that doesn't sound like Anakin. It's like, wait a minute, what?
There was a pretty good argument about that scene. I mean, we're kind of going backwards to episode 2 again, but somebody did a video essay about defending the idea that Padme could still have feelings for him after he had confessed doing that. And essentially it comes down to like, if you consider them not to be human, like if you were to look back at some old Western movies when the cowboy would go and say, I have to go kill these Indians or whatever. Like Padme had no context for what sand people were. She'd never even seen one. She'd only heard the horror stories about all these nomadic creatures that would come and kidnap people and kill you. And
I see. So it's different than killing, humanoid.
Yeah, it's not
children.
like it's not a bunch of kids at a Jedi temple who were defenseless. It was like, it was just these monstrous things that live in the deserts.
You gotta love how they call them younglings. That way they don't have to have that line of dialogue where they actually say he murdered children.
But Padme is the type of character where she wouldn't make a distinction on that.
Yeah,
No.
that didn't make
And
any sense.
it's kind of funny because she's actually more politically aligned with the separatists, who are like the quote unquote bad guys in this movie.
That's actually in a deleted scene where it was kind of like the rumblings of a rebellion, where she was basically Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, a whole bunch of other people, and they were talking about like basically, hey guys, we're kind of the bad guys in this situation. Like there was a whole conversation, and it was part of the movie, but it ultimately got cut out, which is kind of a bummer because it does show that little spark of a rebellion that Padme was involved in, which is kind of cool for her character. But then again,
I don't know. I think one of the biggest elephants in the room for episode 3, besides like the no at the end,
Frankenstein
was fucking like, how lazy of a writer is George Lucas with that death scene with Padme? She just lost the will to live. Are you kidding me? You know how many fucking times I've lost the will to live? I'm still here. Jesus Christ. If it were that fucking simple, there'd be a lot less of us here.
Okay, yeah. So I'm going to address that because I felt the same way you did. I was like, what the crap? That's a cop-out.
Yeah.
Like, what is she doing? She just had 2 children. She doesn't
come
want to
on.
stay alive.
Live for your babies.
So I feel like now that I've
keeps
watched
me
the movie
going.
multiple times, and of course I've had conversation after conversation with like super Star Wars nerds, is if you look at the movie and if you look at the context of what is happening, the droid is the one who says that. It's not her. The droid's like, we don't know why she's dying. It seems like she just lost the will to live because according to this computer, she's not coming back, and we don't know why. But if you look at the context of the scene building between Anakin being rebuilt into Darth Vader, and he's supposed to be dead. I mean, the dude is in rough shape. And then you have Palpatine kind of like just sitting over him, like watching the creation of this Frankenstein monster. I like the idea that he is somehow manipulating the Force to take the power from Padme and keeping Anakin alive.
See, if they
And
had
that's
actually,
why he said at the end, in your anger, you killed her. He put the blame on him, but obviously
if they had actually made that clear in the movie, that would have been brilliant.
It would have been. No, I was just thinking, damn, man, you should have been like,
I think that's
you're making the movie better.
I think that's super nerd.
It's a
fantasy
solid
right there.
theory, though. I think it's a solid theory.
It is. No, that
Alex,
sounds good.
you're using your headcanon to make up for the movie's shortcomings. Like seriously, like what you just came up with is like 10 times better than what was in the actual movie.
But you know what? It's gonna make me enjoy it more. So thank you.
You're welcome. That's what I'm here for.
That's what's going on in my head from now on too.
It's a good theory, and it works. You know, again, it's headcanon. Yes, I'll agree with Kadish.
I like it.
However,
I like it better than Palpatine just trolling Vader. He's like, "Oh yeah, you killed your love.
killed your wife."
It's funny. Like Jude. Jude doesn't like Star Wars, but we were watching it together last night, and the moment where Palpatine just starts like overacting, after he kills Windu, like she literally started cracking up.
It was
because
Mace Windu's not
Ian
dead.
McDiarmid's
like that
over the top performance. Like once he goes full Palpatine,
he turns into the devil.
Like there was a moment where like he.
No.
Like after he shocks Windu, like he kind of goes like, ah. He almost looks like he's going to pass out. Jude just started laughing.
He straight has a freaking boner when he's knighting Darth Vader. He's like, henceforth, you will be known as Darth Vader.
You guys do that so good.
Hey, did you guys notice that in his fight with Yoda, he had the high ground, which is why he any of you guys notice that?
Unlimited power.
I did. That was a really dope fight, though.
It was,
as much as we made fun of Yoda kind of like hopping around like a frog in episode 2, like when he goes up against Palpatine, that's awesome.
Although I don't get his running away, but I want to go back to, I don't think Windu's dead. I don't think he got his hand cut off. He got electrocuted out of a window. And we've seen Jedi make huge falls and jumps and stuff like that. And Samuel L. Jackson did an interview recently where he was like, no, I'm still alive. Windu's still alive. And I think I read I'm sure it's out there. People can Google it, but he even talked to George Lucas about it. And George Lucas was like, sure.
George pretty much.
If you want to think he's still alive, buddy, he's still alive.
George pretty much does whatever Samuel L. Jackson says. Like, hey man, can I get a purple lightsaber? It's like, all right, I guess.
But they're, if Disney Plus runs out of ideas, give me a Mace Windu kung fu type series where he's like old and he's got his fake hand and he's just like doing good deeds around the super low key. That'd be dope, man. That'd be so dope.
Season 4 of The Mandalorian.
Come on, that'd be so good.
It would be pretty cool.
So guys, there was some stuff I noticed in my rewatch that I'd never noticed before when I was watching this, and it kind of has some odd ramifications for this franchise as a whole. So one of my least favorite movies of all time, not just Star Wars, is The Last Jedi.
Yeah,
and there were so many things in The Last Jedi that just rubbed me the wrong way. And one of them was the inclusion of fuel in the Star Wars universe. Because when they got to the whole running out of fuel stuff, I was like, Star Wars never used fuel before.
Completely stole from Battlestar Galactica, by the way.
In this movie, in Revenge of the Sith, there's a scene where Obi-Wan says, "My ship needs fuel."
Yeah.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my God. There's precedence
when he was on
Star Wars
Utapau.
ships, needing fuel.
Well, he was flying around in like a little dinky personal-sized ship, though.
He was, but he still said, "My ship needs fuel."
Since you brought up the Last Jedi,
I'm not sure if I'm ready for this conversation.
No, I'm not going to talk about. I just want to say, so when I left, something that the prequels never did to me. People talk all the shit they want about them.
We talk all the shit.
Well, here's the thing: when I left The Last Jedi, I felt like I got kicked in the dick.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I walked out of that theater. That's the feeling only men know in the pit of your stomach after you just got kicked in the balls real hard.
Yep.
That's how I felt when I left the theater. None of the prequels made me feel like that.
No,
none of them.
Disappointed, but not
defeated. Yes, So I just want to say, when you do your little lists, it's always for me the bottom 3. Are gonna. Well, the tail end one is going to be The Last Jedi.
Yeah,
and then right above that is probably the Phantom Menace, and then right above that,
we'll do this. We'll do this on the last week.
Yeah.
We'll talk about
it. In addition to the fuel aspect, so there's a part where so you know how in we gave Rise of Skywalker crap about Palpatine, not being dead.
Yeah.
So there's a part where Palpatine is talking about the tragedy of Darth Plagueis.
Oh, fantastic.
And it's implied that Palpatine was Plagueis' apprentice, and he killed Plagueis once he had learned everything there was to teach him.
Right.
And Darth Plagueis had learned how to conquer death. And so it's basically been established that, yeah, Palpatine can't die. He knows how to conquer death because he learned it from Darth Plagueis. And therefore, that gives justification to his return in Episode 9.
Are you saying he learned an ability that was quite
Unnatural,
unnatural?
yes. But if you look at Episode 3, where he's given that talk about Darth Plagueis to Anakin, you can now justify him returning in Episode 9 because they basically lay it out right there that Palpatine knew how to conquer death.
I'm shocked that you are even trying to defend that movie.
I'm not trying to defend it. I'm like, it's the groundwork for it's there.
Yeah.
So like, I can't really criticize Episode 9 for that particular thing. I mean, I can, but I'm not justified in doing it.
That's
You know what I don't understand?
solid reflection.
It came out later because I was a little confused when I left that movie. So Palpatine was a clone, and if he see that, okay, so I didn't think he was, but like I've been reading all these things where they're like, yeah, you know, that guy from Lord of the Rings even says, oh, so you know, like that throwaway line where he's like, so Palpatine's figured out cloning technology or something like that, which like is stupid because obviously he knew it because it was way back in the prequel trilogy and all your troopers are clones and stuff.
They make a lot of references to clones in the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, but I don't like if you're gonna be a clone. Why would you have all like those fucked up hands and like you know no bottom half of your body? You gotta be held up.
I think the theory that I like the best is that so when he died when he died in Return of the Jedi and he basically had that explosion of dark force energy.
Yeah.
So like that was him kind of where a light side Jedi becomes one with the Force, a dark side Jedi, when he dies, kind of explodes with the dark side energy, and he's not reabsorbed, but he can reform, but he's all like messed up when he does reform. And
the
so
fact
like,
that we got to do all of this extra,
all these
connecting
mental
the
gymnastics,
dots, you know, Jesus.
So like even though like Rey quote unquote defeated him, he's just going to reform at a certain point, and this goes back to Darth Plagueis conquering death.
Did Plagueis conquer death for other people? Didn't he say in that speech to Anakin that like, ironic, he could stop other people from dying but not save himself?
I always thought the implication there was Sidious killed him.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
His apprentice killed him.
Absorbed his energy and knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I don't want to talk about that.
So another Last Jedi connection. I promise this is the last one. So there's a part right after Yoda escapes from Palpatine, and Bail Organa kind of comes and rescues him. And he's like, failed I have, go into exile I must.
Yeah.
And I sit there and I watch that line, and first of all, it's a stupid rationalization for just giving up and going into exile when you're like the most powerful living Jedi there is. But on top of that, like I sat there and I listened to that line, and I was like, wait a minute. In The Last Jedi, Ghost Yoda shows up and he says, failure, the greatest teacher is. You know, like he gives Luke this big speech about how like the greatest teacher we have is failure. And he learned from his failure, I got to go into exile, which is basically what Luke did. And so it's like, what exactly is Yoda teaching?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
I hate The Last Jedi.
I fucking hate The Last Jedi.
It just dawned on me I'm going to have to rewatch that stupid
You
movie.
are, yeah. We haven't announced it yet, but I guess I announced it to the Patreons, but we're doing a full month of Star Wars. So next week we're doing the spin-offs, Rogue One, Solo.
We're watching
Rogue
everything
One
in chronological
is
order.
so good. I'm telling you, man. You watch Rogue. Somebody put it online. I don't know if you've seen it, where they took the last couple minutes
and
of
just
Rogue One
spliced
and
it.
spliced it to the beginning of New
perfect.
Hope.
It's perfect.
And it's fucking, dude, it's so good.
It's good.
Save it for next week.
Yeah, next week we'll talk about Rogue One. But any final thoughts? I mean, obviously we all love the Anakin versus Obi-Wan battle. It's
Best sword fight.
fantastic.
Best saber
Well,
fight
here's
ever.
something I do want to say about this that I said a while ago. X-Men First Class. I fucking love that movie, and I love the relationship between Xavier and Magneto, right?
Mm-hmm.
Professor X and Magneto. And to me, that felt like what they should have done, what they wanted to do with Anakin and Obi-Wan, because it was just so like, I felt it more in First Class.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, fuck, at the end of this, like these two dudes really do fucking love each other, but they're just so fundamentally opposed.
Yeah. Philosophically.
that they have to be at odds with one another, but they genuinely love each other like brothers. And I never felt that way with Obi-Wan and Anakin, other than just the exposition. We're like, you were my brother, I loved you, blah, blah, blah.
Which is funny because in the second movie, Anakin's always referring to Obi-Wan as a father figure.
Yeah.
And Obi-Wan in the third movie is like, you were my brother. But, in a properly planned trilogy and a properly planned story, you would have a build up to that type of fallout and confrontation where it felt like each of the prequel movies were almost like self-contained to the point where they were too episodic. They didn't build up to anything.
Yeah, and I just didn't care as much as I wanted to care about their falling out. And I didn't realize it until I saw First Class, and I was like, "Fuck, this is exactly that's how that should have been."
Yeah. I totally feel that. That's
I think
true.
To me that last half of that movie is so much better because that's the movie that I wanted to see since I was 12 years old.
Right?
Yeah. I wanted to see that last fight. I wanted to see how Vader was made, and all the build up to that was just fluff.
Yeah.
So.
Is there any truth to that rumor that Spielberg helped direct that fight scene? Because I read that a long time ago.
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of behind the scenes footage, and I don't see Spielberg anywhere in there. So I don't know. I mean, I'd be interested to find out for sure. But
Spielberg's been known to kind of ghost direct a lot of stuff, especially for his friends.
That shit was good.
Wouldn't surprise me.
But the worst part of that fight is the end where it's like, it's over, Anakin, I have the high ground. And you're just like, wait, what?
Well, I don't know, man. I mean, again,
like Anakin could have just hopped off over that little patch of lava there and continued fighting.
Fighting uphill, though. I don't know. I like that it's kind of a callback to episode 1, where Darth Maul very clearly had the high ground, and Obi-Wan got the upper hand on him because he was cocky. I have the high ground. I'm good. I'm just gonna mess with you for a little while. But then, go ahead.
Why did Obi-Wan just leave him there?
Because he couldn't bring himself.
He couldn't bring him to kill him. He couldn't walk over to him, just slaughter him.
He could have taken him somewhere and had him fixed up.
And then what?
And then what?
I don't know.
I don't know.
He probably just assumed he was going to die because
Yeah,
he catches on
assumed he was
fire
dead.
when he's burning up while he walks
melting.
away. Yeah,
I mean, I don't think he expected him to live much
He's
longer.
like, I hate you.
But he's what a dick move, though.
Yeah. Well, it's Qui-Gon's influence.
Full circle.
It's like I don't leave a dog laying there without putting him out of his misery.
Yeah.
And Obi-Wan just left him
I think
a charred, burning, breathing crisp. It was
Yeah,
brutal.
with no legs and no arm.
I think he felt at that point that Anakin deserved that type of suffering.
Really?
he killed.
That's extreme.
That
He
doesn't-
killed children.
He force choked his
did.
pregnant wife.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We didn't talk about the spousal abuse in this episode either. Yikes.
Oh my God! I watched a thing earlier today. It's so funny. So I watched a live stream on Facebook today, Lady Problems, and it was all about domestic abuse. And I couldn't help but think, because I knew I was going to be talking about the prequels, about the
There's a lot of emotional and verbal
and
and physical
abuse in
in the prequels.
portrayed in especially in episode 3. You were with him.
It's so cringy. That whole love story just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
No,
Oh
it
my
doesn't.
God.
There's no reason for those two to be together except for they're supposed to be together.
Yeah.
And how she names the kids is so arbitrary too. Like there's no build up.
There's no reason for those kids to be named that. Like they didn't have a baby naming book at their apartment or something with those two names circled.
And speaking of no reason to do stuff, so at the end, Bail Organa takes ownership of 3PO and R2 and hands them over to Antilles.
Yep, Captain Antilles.
Captain Antilles. And he just, after he does that, he's like, oh, and have the protocol droid's mind wiped. And you're just like, wait, why? I mean, I know why, but what was his motivation to
knew
have
too
that
much.
and leave R2 intact?
I don't know. That doesn't make any sense either. It's just because he's not supposed to have any knowledge, I guess. Does he? 3PO doesn't remember Obi-Wan. He doesn't remember anybody.
But what's crazy is Obi-Wan doesn't remember either of those guys.
The only reason I can justify that is because A, the prequels ruined everything, and B, because
The real answer is those movies weren't written yet.
yeah. I mean, let's be real about it. Like George didn't think about that, and I guess he didn't watch. I always felt like after 2005, when I would go back and watch the prequels, I always been like, did George not even watch the original trilogy when he made these movies?
How would you feel if they did an actual reboot, like they did like with Spider-Man, like with Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, they totally rebooted. How would you feel if Disney was like, you know what? All these fans, everybody's bitching. Fuck it. We're going to reboot the whole thing.
Not with
I bet you it
Captain
happens
Kennedy.
in like 60, 70 years when they run out of fucking ideas.
Maybe.
When
but-
all of us original fans are all long
Oh,
gone
dead.
and
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah.
You know what's funny though is like if you look at Rise of Skywalker again, it's 3PO has this arc where he just keeps getting his mind wiped and like resetting to default.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, don't
Yeah,
even.
but
like,
R2 has his backup, right?
Yeah. R2's,
I hope
R2's the Deus Ex Machina of
No, yeah, he's through everything. Like if you watch like the Droids cartoon series into like the all of the movies into like Clone Wars, he's like the. It's like
Get out
it's
of jail
almost like
free card.
it's almost like if you think about it, maybe like I always thought this would be a cool idea. Is if like at the very end they were like it was R2 telling the story somehow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he's the only one that's
been through the whole thing.
everything.
I really
He
wish
remembers it
BB-8
all.
had been replaced by R2
Yeah.
in the sequel trilogy. Like,
Yeah.
I think it would have been more appropriate.
I agree with that. But they wanted to sell,
Yeah.
more merch,
I don't
have more toys. But I hope I'm
J.J.
here.
Abrams drew an 8 on a paper and was like, make this a robot. I don't know. Are we all sufficiently depressed now?
I mean, you know what? On my rewatch, I liked these movies much better than I have in the past. And I think it's just because I now have something worse to compare them to with the sequel trilogy.
That is true.
I
That
wish
is
I
true.
could say that.
Really?
You're on the same level. as the sequels?
My mind hasn't changed at all.
That's
really?
funny. I'm actually going to finish episode 3, even though there's no point because we're doing the podcast now, just because it's like, I kind of just
You
want
have
to.
to. Now, yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot to love about these movies, but they're just so bogged down by all these
I
plot
always tell people-
conveniences and character stuff.
I always tell people at least it's got the right DNA in them. They're still Star Wars,
Yeah.
so I don't loathe them like I do the Disney trilogy. So, I mean, they're still George Lucas. They're still Star Wars. They're still the characters we like.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
I can't help it. I'm still a purist. Like the original trilogies can't be messed with.
Nope.
And the prequels to me just didn't line up with it. Things just didn't make sense. There was a really cool. If you guys are as salty as we are about the prequel trilogy, I would suggest going and watching a series of YouTube videos called "What If the Star Wars Prequels Were Good." And this dude rewrote using the same characters and the same plot lines and everything. Just kind of reorganized everything and changed the characters around. He made Anakin older in the first one, and he made that relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin more of a brother as opposed to a father-son relationship. It was a brotherhood. And there was a really interesting little love triangle going on between him and Padme and Obi-Wan because they were all around the same age, so it made more sense. And that kind of sparked the rivalry between him and Obi-Wan. It was really, really well written, and he did like a little like pencil sketch animation type thing for it. It was great. So it's
There's also a fan edit of the Phantom Menace out there.
Yes.
That basically fixed the movie, like made it actually feel more like Star Wars and made it a better film.
yeah,
Really?
I've seen that too.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
it's
have not
really
seen
good.
that.
They basically just cut out like half of Jar Jar's parts and all the cringy dialogue. They cut that out.
Yeah,
and
like
they just-
all the aliens speak in alien language with subtitles, kind of like how
that's
they did.
good. Oh, that's
I
way
remember
better.
this now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that called, man? Yeah, I have to get that link.
It's got to be like fan edit or something.
Phantom Menace fan edit.
I forget the name of it, but it was like when someone sent it to me, I was like, I didn't even like the original. I'm not gonna like this one, but it felt more like a Star Wars movie, and it was really good.
I agree. I really enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun to watch, and it did improve the movie quite a bit. I mean, it's not perfect. It's still got some issues, but it's far, far better than what we got.
So, since we're talking about prequels, and I feel like we're wrapping up pretty soon, so like, would we all agree that like when the goal with a prequel should be to make whatever it's prequeling better, right? This will segue into, I hope I can be a guest on when you talk about Rogue One, but I feel like the only prequel I've actually ever seen in my life that does that is Rogue One.
I would agree with that.
Yeah,
For sure.
Yeah.
At least in the Star Wars space.
yeah.
I'm trying to think outside Star Wars. Well, you got The Hobbit for Lord of the Rings. I don't feel like did anything to justify or to improve the originals. What other prequel movies are there?
You know what's funny? Episodes 1 through 3 started this whole prequel craze where it's basically an excuse for lazy writers to take ideas that have already been established and just expound upon them as opposed to coming up with their own original ideas.
Yeah.
Like backstories can be really cool, except the stakes are very limited. You're boxing yourself in because automatically you know where everybody's going to end up.
Yeah.
However, it still can be done in a justifiable way.
What is it they say? It's the journey, not the destination.
Yeah.
You know, so.
I mean, like if these movies had actually had a good story that was well structured and built up to, this big reveal of how Anakin became Darth Vader, I think that, the whole prequel trap about knowing how it's going to end wouldn't be an issue. But it was
Because that's what we were there to see.
Yeah, it was because these three movies were just so poorly made that they just fall short. So what I want to do is I want to go around here, starting with Alex. How would you rank the prequel trilogy in terms of just these three movies from best to worst?
3, 2. Let me start from best to worst. It's 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
Or maybe 3, 1, 2. See, those two are interchangeable. I'd say 3, 1, 2. Because I like the pod racing so much that it beats out pretty much anything else in episode 2.
MattVader, what's your ranking?
I concur. 3, 2, 1, but 1 and 2 are both like super close. They flip flop every time I think about it.
Every time I think about it, I'm like, well, yeah, but with that one part. Go ahead, Danny.
Well, if I hadn't been influenced by the whole father experience, I might feel like you guys. But I actually really like 2 because of the experience that I had. So for me, it's 3, 2, 1, like easily.
Okay, right on. Kadish, what about you?
I'd have to go with 3, 2, 1 as well.
Cool. All right, everybody. That's our episode. Dump some serious salt on George Lucas. See, this is why I feel bad, because he sold the franchise because of people like us. We're like, your movies are shit.
Well, I think between all of us, how much money did we give? I mean, Jesus, you saw it like 10 times. I've seen the movies.
Yeah.
You've seen them. You saw it 3 times in one day. I mean, geez, like we're allowed. We gave those guys our money.
I'll say this: if Lucas had decided to step down after Phantom Menace and give the reins to someone else, these movies might have turned out a lot better. But I think it was his decision to keep directing and writing all 3 of them.
Yeah,
that was the real Achilles heel of these films. Because I just don't think I don't think he's a talented enough storyteller to handle.
He definitely had it. He had an A team with the original trilogy.
He did, but I mean, what's the sequel trilogy's excuse then?
Nostalgia.
Tune in 3 weeks.
Tune in a couple of weeks. We'll tear that. This will seem mild compared to what we'll talk about.
Right?
I can't believe I'm going to have to watch all 3 of those movies again.
I don't know if I am.
Oh man, I won't. I don't know if I'll watch.
I'm
Last
actually
Jedi
going to be
again.
earnest about it. Like I watched the prequels. I've watched them recently. I think a couple months ago, I watched them with my son. No, the prequels. I watched the prequels recently before we decided to do this podcast, and then I rewatched them again. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to sit down. I haven't done it yet, and I feel like I at least should do it once. I have not sat down and binged all 3 of the sequels in a row and try to feel what it would be like to have the whole story in front of you. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to earnestly try to do it.
On May 4th, they're putting The Rise of Skywalker on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
I think it's only going to be there for the one day, though.
Really?
I think. Is that right?
I feel once they put it on there, they should just leave it there.
I think it's just for Star Wars Day.
Okay. Well, whatever. I'm going to watch all 3.
I'm not 100% sure there.
I don't know. I feel like you could skip The Last Jedi and not lose anything really,
Except for Luke dying. You'd be like, why is he a ghost?
Because he lost the will to live.
Died of a broken heart.
All right, guys. Thank
He
you.
lost all hope.
I'd like to thank our hosts, our co-hosts, Matthew Kadish, MattVader, the Dark Lord himself, and Danny. Thank you so much for coming and talking about Star Wars with us for this great month. I wanted to thank our fans and listeners. You guys are really the motivation for us trying to do this show and make it as good as possible and have some really fun, awesome content that makes you think, has a little bit of salt, but we're still nerds and we still love all this stuff. So if you want to support the podcast, you can go to saltynerdpodcast.com. Check out all our stuff there. You can go to Salty Nerd Club. Maybe if you want to donate to the Patreon, that would be really appreciated. And you can help us to grow this podcast even more. We rely on you guys, and we would love your feedback. So if you're listening to this on YouTube, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for more content. If you're listening on iTunes, please leave us a review. I love reading the fans' reviews, even if it's negative. If you're like, you guys suck, like that's cool. Just go ahead and throw it in there. 5-star.
5-star reviews.
5-star reviews.
Oh my!
On YouTube.
Nothing else.
Be sure to click that bell on YouTube to get
Smash
notifications.
that bell icon and give us a thumbs up.
Because YouTube's trying to censor us. us. Make sure you subscribe to Fight the Man. Anyway, yeah, so we really appreciate you guys for all of our content, for all of our past episodes, and for all of our future episodes. You can go to saltynerd.com. Signing out today, Matthew Kadish, where can they find you on the socials?
You can find me at Matthew Kadish on Twitter. And if they want to check out my books to see if I'm full of crap or not, in terms of my ability to tell stories, they can go to kadishbooks.com. That's KADISH books.com. Takes you right to my Amazon page.
MattVader, what about you? Where can they find you?
You write books?
Really? The paper Kindles.
Who knew? You can find me at MattVader74 on the socials. What is that? Twitter.
At Chewy Louie.
Yeah. No,
on Instagram.
That's my cat has an Instagram at Truly_Louie. It's very, very cute. Very cute.
He's adorable.
And and I'm at MattVader74 on Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram.
Right.
So, yeah.
And Danny, where can they find you, and where can they check out your charity event?
Okay, so they can, I'm at Dork Knight LV, and that's got 2 Ks, Dork Knight LV, on all the social media stuff. And then my charity, Nerds Never Say Die. Right now, most of the activity is on Facebook, so just you can check me out there. I'm starting, like I said, a 5-part series tomorrow, which will be in the past when you hear this. So just check it out. And if you want to help support mental health awareness and suicide prevention in Las Vegas, please check that out. That's about it.
Right on. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and may the 4th be with you.